Okay, guys, we live and we're broadcasting. So a warm welcome to everyone to this Endeavour Connect session. Thanks so much for all the panelists, both from South Africa and Israel. We'll get into welcoming each individual in a moment. But the topic for today, remote sales for tech entrepreneurs, and really how to build a global tech business through selling remotely. And now, really, this topic is we wanted to focus on it specifically now, given the COVID crisis, all of us sitting, working remotely, there's accelerated digitization. And so what that means is the world is effectively borderless for us, especially the tech entrepreneurs who are selling through to the large corporates, the large businesses. Whether we're based here in South Africa or whether our tech business is in the US, we have just as much access to that large customer, whether they're in the US or in Europe. So very much looking forward to hearing everyone's advice and learnings today. And just before kicking off, wanted to really thank the Israel Trade Mission for partnering with us on this event today. I think us as South African entrepreneurs, we couldn't look to another nation like Israel. Israel is so well positioned, and they've had such a phenomenal track record of creating incredible tech businesses and unicorns from a market that's a really small base. All the businesses that are built there are built for the global markets. Just wanted to thank specifically Leo Kanan, who's the Israeli ambassador to South Africa, and AMIT Lev, who've enabled this today. So thanks very much to them. And we'll hear a little bit later from Leo, and he'll share a few words. But then just moving on straight into the webinar. First off, just Endeavour. So as Endeavour, why we were really keen for this topic today is about 80% of the entrepreneurs that we support here in South Africa, whether they're Endeavour entrepreneurs, so have passed the international selection panel, or the other 50 or 70 teams that we're working with in our pipeline, they're predominantly tech entrepreneurs. And again, like most of those are selling B2B. So it's absolutely a wonderful opportunity for our South Africa tech-based entrepreneurs to learn from you guys as investors in the space and founders of successful tech businesses, just sharing what you've seen over the past 3 months. Some practical examples, some things that have worked well, others not so well, and really how we should be thinking about building out our remote sales capability to really make the most of this opportunity, albeit really tough trading conditions. I just see Leo has just joined us. So Leo, I just wanted to hand over to you to say a few words of welcome to everyone, and then we can get into the questions on the panel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through well.
Okay, thank you very much. So it took me a while. I don't know what's going on. I wanted to join you from the conference room, but cell phone it is. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for joining us. I didn't hear the start of it to understand how many viewers we have, but I was very happy to hear that there are quite a few. It won't be news if I'll tell you now that the challenges are enormous and special in this time. But what is really strange is the division between the problem itself and the solutions. While the problem is that for the first time that I can remember, that each country is left for itself. And that's a very special situation right now in the world. You know, borders are getting closed, and each country has to challenge its health system and social welfare and economy and markets. So we are left, each one to deal with it for himself regarding countries. Yet, it is very clear that the solution should be as a joint effort, as a global effort, coming from the world. If it's a health solution for the virus, it's like a vaccine or improvement of medicines, of course it should come from a global effort, which is contradiction to the situation that each country should fight for itself. So this is why I believe that we should, and we need to find ways to increase the cooperation and the collaboration right now in the world. And as Israel is leading country in those areas of science and technology and innovation, I expect my country to be in the front row, in the front seats of sharing with the world the experiences that we have in order for that global effort to advance us towards something that will take us out of this chaos and strange situation that is following us for the last few months. As we are number one in the world in startup per capita, and number one in R&D, this is why my expectation from Israel is to lead right now as the world needs to find solution together. And this is why we are happy with the embassy and with the trade nation to organize this important webinar, when we are happy to present the Israeli speakers that can talk about experiences in Israel for the Israeli companies in how to deal with this challenging and unstable times. And I hope that you will hear ideas that can be implemented also in those difficult situations that are not only in Israel, but also in South Africa, rest of Africa, and the world itself. I would like to thank Endeavor for assisting and for facilitating, Endeavor as South Africa for facilitating everything, and to our very, very effective and the trade mission that is finding in those difficult moments when we cannot bring Israelis here, or missions or delegation, they find ways in order to keep the connection, the cooperation between the two economies, both Israeli and the South African. We will continue to find suggestions for activities like that. And I urge you, if you need anything more after this fascinating webinar, if you need something else from our trade mission or from the embassy, please do not hesitate to be in touch with us. I'm sorry that I cannot stay for the full webinar, but I'll try to keep with you for a while, and I wish you to enjoy it very much. Thank you so much.
Leo, thank you very much, and great to meet you. So first, just to introduce myself, I'm Alison Collier, and I lead the team here in Endeavor in South Africa. And like I was saying earlier, Endeavor, it's a global organization, and it supports and accelerates the growth of high impact entrepreneurs, specifically those entrepreneurs that are moving to be market leading positions in their local country or else expanding internationally. And the other one mission of Endeavor that I wanted to share with you all before we go into the panel, which really echoes a lot of what Leo was talking about earlier, is Endeavor. It's an NGO, and all of the Endeavor mentors offer their services through to entrepreneurs on a pro bono basis. And the caliber of the mentors is just phenomenal. I mean, Michael Jordaan is one of the mentors that supports our teams here in South Africa. And then if you look towards the entrepreneurs, the portfolio of entrepreneurs here in South Africa is delivering incredible returns of close to 30% annual growth in revenue and 29% in headcount, and that's off a base of an average of 200 million rand in revenue. And the businesses that are smaller towards a more smaller side of like the 50 million rand mark, their growth rates are north of 50%. So it's just very impressive the performance that these tech entrepreneurs are delivering today. So looking forward to learning from everyone. So I just want to say to our panelists, thanks so much for making the time. The South African panelists, Michael and Skalk, and then those from Israel, AMIT from the investor side, from BESSEMER, and then Jason and Asher, who from two of the most innovative Israeli businesses at very different stages in their growth, but MOBILEYE and PECAN. So looking forward to hearing your insights as we get through the panel. But just to kick us off, Michael, I wanted to start with you. And just, you've invested in so many incredible disruptive tech businesses, as well as telcos that are based here in South Africa. And all of these are, they're solving local problems, but they've got global potential. So what would be great just is if you could share just one or two stories from these tech businesses where you're seeing them, the teams being able to deliver strong sales, albeit these really difficult trading conditions, or else just innovative new ways that they're approaching selling remotely.
Okay, thanks, Alison. I hope you can hear me. If
Yes.
I could just start one step back, maybe particularly for the South African audience, you know that in my previous incarnation, I was a banker. And what I do now is so very different from banking. You know, in banking, your upside is capped because you just have a margin on a loan, but you can have a big downside in the form of bad debt. Venture capital, of course, is the opposite. You could have such a big upside that you don't really worry that much if 1 or 2 or 3 or more of the investments in your portfolio fail, provided that some of those investments go up, let's say 10 times or more, because then the overall portfolio return can still be good. So the investments that I've tried to make, that my so-called sweet spot would be those companies that solve a very real problem, but much better than the current way it's being solved, which often means that they use tech for their business model. It's a different type of enablement. And most importantly, to come back to your question, is these businesses often anticipate the future better than the incumbents do. And that means that what's happened in this COVID disaster has in many cases actually been to their advantage, because they've anticipated a future that is far more based on data, where, for example, one does a video conference, as we do now, instead of a, shall we call it a traditional conference or face-to-face meeting. But you asked me some examples of those investments where the sales have been very strong in this environment. And the big example is Rain, which is a data-only telco. And clearly there's been a massive growth of data all along in the world. It's growing at 60% compound. But suddenly when people were locked down in their homes, they wanted entertainment through streaming, and they could work from home, and that was data. But it wasn't just that. The company itself had to capitalize on it, and it launched within 48 hours a completely new unlimited product. There's a big demand for unlimited, because most of the companies actually measure data in gigs. But when you start working from home 8 hours a day, when your kids stream from home, etc., it was unlimited data. They also innovated, when you sell a SIM card, you typically have to do RECA, which is a physical check. And they pioneered an electronic form of RECA, so that you could deliver a SIM card and people could go online and do that themselves. And of course, this was very positive when you had a courier service, when all the competitors had their shops closed. So it was just one of those things where a startup came up and could come up with a product that the other guys couldn't come up with, which is unlimited electronic RECA and couriers. And for me, it was a great example of a very agile company that within 48 hours could respond to market demand. And that resulted in a 3- to 4-fold rise in monthly sales. And that is still maintaining even 3 to 4 months after the lockdown. Another example that I like is Snaplify. Now, Snaplify provides electronic textbooks to schools. And this is a problem in our country. Often the textbooks don't arrive, or they arrive late, or there are too many in one subject and too little in the other. And clearly when it's an electronic textbook, you don't have any of those problems. They arrive on time and you have the exact right amounts. But what they did is they recognized that many schools aren't enabled and also can't pay for new textbooks. And they negotiated with all the suppliers in the world so that schools could now get free electronic textbooks for all subjects for the rest of the year. Now, clearly this is free, and this is in the hope of future business, but I think that did a lot for education in South Africa. It's one of those startups that I'm very proud of. And then finally, just an example of the world of wine. I'm sitting here in Stellenbosch, surrounded by vineyards. We had a crazy situation in South Africa where the online purchase of wine was prohibited. I say crazy because no one else in the world did it, and certainly some of us see wine as a very essential product. So what this company, Port to Port, did, it sells premium wines online. They said, well, this is our opportunity to go abroad. And they took the entire software, they took obviously all the products that they have, at least those ones that I could find in London, and immediately relaunched themselves in another country in the UK, which it's just been a month or two, but it's actually going very, very well. So they kind of used this opportunity of being blocked from sales in one country to launch in another country. Those would be my stand-up examples, Alison.
No, thanks so much, Michael. And I want to say it's something that we've seen. It's been so impressive with the entrepreneurs who we work with. They've been, because of their size, they've got the management teams that are there, and they're able to shift their focus and be agile and adjust very quickly to these changing needs. And something that you called out, where there was the existing relationship with Rain with the courier businesses, that they were able to then fulfill the delivery. It's another observation. There have been so many examples of entrepreneurs partnering with other entrepreneurs to fulfill the slightly changed needs, and those that can partner fastest, rather than build themselves, because there's no time to build yourself, have really been able to capture additional market share and just meet the customer's needs much more effectively. So I want to say that's thanks so much for those examples, and hats off to those businesses. And I want to say, for Snaplify getting the contribution that they can make the textbooks for free, I mean, that's an amazing offer for the South Africa, for the schools that can't afford them. So that's great. And then I suppose just as a second question and a follow-up question on that is, what practical advice or lessons would you have to share with the entrepreneurs on the call? And perhaps this is some of the lessons that you've shared or spoken through with some of the investee businesses that you have, to increase the effectiveness of remote sales, and then really build a strong sales pipeline. So
again, I want to take one step back, if you don't mind, which is everything has changed. COVID has changed everything. The economies in the world have changed, and in a way that is not suddenly going to change back. So it's a really good time for businesses to focus on first principles, to start thinking with a blank sheet of paper wherever they can. So it isn't just about sales. That's the point I'd like to make. It is about really thinking about your product, about your pricing, about your target market, about what problem you really solve. It's time, for example, to think about your cost structure. So should your cost structure be as fixed as it is? Could you bring it down? Could it be more variable? And when you think about the pricing of your product, generally, I think there was an argument to be made that pricing should go down and not up. And I say that because I think economic demand in most of the world has gone backwards. So you had to rethink all of those things before you could actually do something like a sales initiative. It really was rethinking your entire company. But there again, if I can just go back to the examples, I mentioned Snaplify. They recognized that e-textbooks could solve the problem, but most schools in the country couldn't afford it. That meant that about 12 million kids in South Africa go to the schools every day, that a big proportion of them would waste this time. They, as a startup, couldn't afford giving free textbooks, but they went back to all their suppliers and basically said, the sales cycle for this year has been done already. You're not going to lose anything out of it. They got all the big names to sign up. They were able to deliver that to the school. So it's a big social good that was created. But I do believe that those schools, having experienced for the first time the advantages of e-textbooks, that's going to help in the sales cycle for next year. So, that's an example of something you do. In the case of Rain, the data network that I spoke about, they were able to optimize digital marketing during this time. So physical print didn't work. Newspapers were not being printed or not being bought. Same with magazines. In fact, retailers weren't allowed to sell them. And the amount of advertising through, let's say, Google and Facebook also dropped off quite dramatically. So it was possible to acquire customers at a much lower cost than you usually would. So they were able to really focus on digital marketing. And then they had some other clever initiatives, again, partnering with other brands where you could get your SINs through different methods. For example, some of them were packaged in some of the magazines that were in fact being sold, or they partnered with a retail store in South Africa that people could go and actually collect their SIM cards. So alternative distribution methods. In general, what I wanted to say about remote sales and building a pipeline, the one truly positive thing about this crisis is that what we are doing now, talking over video conferencing, has just become much more common. I've been in many board meetings before where some person tries to dial in, and it was always a step up. That person was either so big on the screen that they were kind of self-aware, or they were a couple of seconds behind everybody else, and when they tried to get a word in, it was too late and it just didn't flow. But with everybody doing video conferencing, it has become the new normal, which means that we don't have to travel as much anymore. Not even local travel, I think international travel, which is complex and expensive and across time zones. It's much, much easier now to get into the diary of many people when you say it's going to be a 5 or 10 or 15-minute Zoom meeting, then I'd like to come and see you and you have to offer me coffee and tea and so on. So I think the real positive thing about remote sales and building pipelines and so on is that you can do that not even from the comfort of your work in your city, you can even do it from the comfort of your own house. And that's a big positive for startups that can't afford these big travel budgets.
No, absolutely. And I want to say the time that you save and the efficiency of the meetings is also so much increased. It's makes a huge difference. So just with that, I wanted to shift over to AMIT from Israel. So just to give you a quick overview of BESSEMER. So BESSEMER, for the South Africans on the call, has invested in some of the most successful tech entrepreneurs globally. And a couple of the names include Wix, DocuSign, Twilio, LinkedIn, Pinterest, but many, many others that are very successful Israeli-founded tech entrepreneurs. So I suppose just the opening question. So what has made all these Israeli companies so successful in breaking into markets that are so much bigger than Israel, you know, like the US?
Yeah. And it doesn't allow me to launch the video somehow. It says that the host stopped it.
Oh no, it's just Matt. Can you
yeah, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Great, okay.
Yeah, great, you're on the screen.
Okay,
so great. Yeah, we'd love to know, like, what is the sales playbook, or what do you see as being the secret sauce of these Israeli-founded businesses that are just performing so well in the international markets?
Yeah, it's a good question, and for us, we're a large fund. We're now part of our 10th fund. It's $1.8 billion fund. And it's a global fund, so there's no BESSEMER Europe or BESSEMER Israel or anything like it. So basically, our LPs, our investor invested in BESSEMER $1.8 billion, and they expect to get whatever returns, and they don't really care where the money is deployed as long as there is returns, which means that by definition, the companies we invest here in Israel have to be at least as good or not better than the counterparts in the US. And it sometimes is amazing, like, to see what's happening here in terms of the ecosystem and how the Israeli entrepreneurs and companies are able to sustain, and how they're able to become a dominant player in the US, even though they're built in a completely different location, different time zone, very far away, and English is not even the first language for most of our entrepreneurs. And the trend is accelerating. Even I moved from BESSEMER New York to BESSEMER Israel, or to our Israeli office 6 years ago, and the trend is just accelerating in terms of what we're seeing here. And I think the answers, there's obviously lots of answers, because it's be a complete separate discussions, but I think the biggest thing is just as there's no local market. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial talent, a lot of people that want to launch startups, and that's a different discussion, but it just fits really well the Israeli kind of mentality of chutzpah, of a lot of immigrants, of people who don't follow the rules. So kind of there's like this really, really good kind of characteristics for startups, and many people launch startups, but they just can't do anything in Israel because the market, there's 8 million people in Israel, and there's no other market. So the first market they go to is what's the largest market in the world? It's the US, and hence they just go there. And then over time, it kind of perfected itself. So over time, there are better playbooks, there's more serial entrepreneurs, people who've kind of done it, there are recipes you can follow, there are people you can work with, and it becomes better and better over time. But the biggest thing is there's no local market, and there's no other place to sell to our neighbors. You just can't sell to any of them. Obviously, you can visit any of the countries. So it's kind of an isolated island that has to find another market to sell to.
No, I want to say when there's a need and when you have to go and sell internationally, then then entrepreneurs, they'll make a plan. So I hear you exactly. And then just when you look across the portfolio of investments that you have, And just over the past 3 months, really interested to understand a couple of examples, specifically from the smaller B2B tech businesses that you invested in, how you've seen them manage their sales remotely, and what you've seen is working really successfully for some, given which customers that they're approaching or which regions that they're working in, and likewise perhaps also what isn't working so well. So we can also know, get advice from you on what not to do.
So obviously what we've seen and across our global portfolio is that COVID has kind of accelerated many of the trends that were already there before, like e-commerce, digitization, digital transformation, cloud adoption, etc. So when COVID first hit, we were all really worried of kind of what's going to happen to our portfolio companies. And in the first few weeks, like everyone kind of built their own revised budget. And now we still don't know the answer, but it's more clear, and you see some of the companies that have kind of benefited from it, including a company like Wix, where everybody is building websites. And if you're any business today and you don't have a website, you kind of, you realize you have at this point to have a website and digital presence. And they're now trading at north of $10 billion valuation. So there's these which are more obvious, but if you go into the kind of the lower stage or the earlier stage, and mostly B2B companies, what we have seen is, again, if you're in one of these trends that is positively impacted, like I have a company that helps companies improve their self-serve. So now everybody's looking to improve their self-serve because people realize that it's very difficult to have call centers and you have to have a better way to answer questions that your customers might have online. So they kind of get a benefit of just there's more interest in the product now. So it's kind of luck meets or acceleration of what was supposed to happen anyway. But other companies that I have that are more kind of traditional or have less to do, because everybody's trying to position themselves now to why they're benefiting from COVID. Like every pitch that we get now it starts with like we're benefiting from COVID because A and B. But in reality, what we are seeing, which is good, is companies are rethinking, or many of our companies are kind of rethinking their sales model because they realize it's going to be very difficult to build a large sales team in the US. It's going to meet in person and play golf with the CISO, CIO, or whoever, and try to sell kind of traditional enterprise way. And they're trying to rethink clever ways of getting in, which for one of my companies, for example, in the security space, they kind of launched this new product, which is much more simple, which you can just download and try to and start playing with. And it's not as secure as their main product, but the fact that you can just download and play with it and see the benefit. And now they're going to launch a large campaign, and you can make the sales process much more self-serve or more efficient. In the long run, should help. And then
exactly. And I just want to say we've seen a lot of examples here as well where businesses have created like entry-level product or entry-level service that's very easy for businesses to take on trial and run with. And quite a few of those have been done at a very low or no cost. And then at the moment that the businesses are seeing benefit, then you're able to layer on with the value-add services, but you've got the in. Because to get a new customer right now it's really difficult without that existing relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, by the way, in general, like I typically prefer companies that have a low-touch model or a low-touch sales model because they become much more efficient when they scale. So I think rethinking everything with having this basically not being able to sell the traditional way and having to rethink everything from the go-to-market to the messaging to the product itself to how you do support. Under this new circumstance, if you're able to make it work, it's just much better in the long run. So I think we're going to see many more companies that are launching these or launching now, which should just have to, by necessity, build a product / company that's easy or kind of lower touch, which I think is going to be way more interesting than a company that just had the benefit at the time of just hiring expensive sales people. And then it's going to go out and try to sell their product.
No, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And it's interesting discussing, Skalk was raising that same point earlier on Monday when we had a short chat before we had the panel. So I just wanted to move across to Skalk. So Skalk from Intersect, I'm the CEO here of Intersect in South Africa. Maybe if you can just share, before we get into the conversation, just a quick outline of Intersect, your customers, and then how you've grown your international sales from your South African base.
Okay, so Intersect is a security and authentication company. We're roughly 10 years old, and we play almost exclusively into the financial services sector. So we help banks look after, and solve their security problems in terms of all their digital or remote channels. So obviously with COVID, we've seen quite a spike on the usage of these things. So because we actually help them to also run many of these things, it's a lot of it goes through our infrastructure. It's a SaaS business. In terms of growth, or just in terms of what we also, once you have that channel, so ultimately just a step back, it's we learned very early on that digital authentication, where we started, means that you have to identify the end user. So that means digital ID, or it will soon mean that single thing. And we think banks are super positioned for this. So our real estate is a piece of software in the bank's banking application, and a presence behind their firewall, and all transactions going through our infrastructure. So that means that during this interesting time, if banks want to do something quickly and bring something to market to react, I don't think a bank can do it in 2 days, as Michael explained. I've heard banks describe themselves as glacial in their speed. But I think, that's something that we can actually help them, and we have done so. It's quite interesting, just as a side note. So some of the things that we do is, yet again, we have this channel to the customer. So scan to pay, I think, banks and customers learned quite quickly that tap to pay, which is supposedly contactless, is not that contactless, because you still have to enter a PIN or sign something. So I think the mobile on that side, or your own device, is completely contactless in terms of somebody else's devices. And we've seen that this, in my view, we've seen it in South Africa, but I think this is going to take, it's really going to come off in terms of scope and usage. But we've got all these enrolled users, and we can simply switch that on. So we've actually seen one of our customer banks in SA that this is to the glacial point, that they moved so quickly that the procurement lady earlier this week finally got to us, and all these tough questions, and just to check my 2 cents, when is the kickoff meeting? And our response was, well, we launch next week. So
speed is a little bit different to normal.
Exactly. So banks are even getting fast. So this is a strange world. But anyway, so in terms of international, we've got 50 million enrolled end customers. It's from South Africa right over Africa, a couple of million in Europe, and then over to the US. Obviously, as per earlier, it's the big market. It's the biggest market in the world, and something where we all aspire to have a success. So that's and then also in LATAM at this stage. So it is a B2B to sell, B2B to C, we've also, I think we've learned, South African entrepreneurs in terms of the ecosystem here is nowhere as advanced, and I think that's some of the things that we've battled with in the past compared to Israel, is that we're also a small market. We're also middle class, 8.9 million. And interestingly enough, South African or globally, there's no succinct or common definition of what middle class is. So the US has got 130 million or so middle class, and their definition is $100,000 a year for middle class. Whereas in South Africa, it's 5,600 to 40,000 Rand. So, most people that actually have somebody, looking after their childminders, they're middle class according to that definition. So the market here is super small, just big enough to kind of get size wise, to get tests and get the users, but I don't think it's big enough to actually catapult you into the other markets. So that's and the ecosystem isn't there. The lessons aren't there. The network hasn't been there. I think it's changing now, and I think that's where Endeavour is playing a very good role through actually its network, but understanding, having that soft landing on the other side, knowing what to look out for, not having to pay the school fees yourself is I think something that can assist. So in terms of sales, it's something where it's what the future holds is super interesting. Nobody knows what that is. We used to go to conferences. We used to spend a ton of money at Money 2020 and these kind of things. I don't know who's going to go to those conferences. Yeah, we looked at our travel budget for this year and our conference budget, and we cut it in half. And probably we're not going to spend the remaining part. So what do you do with that? So what we've seen, and interesting, is, you know, we've looked at this, and I think it's everybody's trying to, all the conference attendees are trying to figure out what are we going to do next. You know, and I think it's webinars was hot, and everybody was doing webinars, and then it's blogs, and then it's guest speakers and this. And I think it's so noisy, and the noise just keeps moving from one aspect and one area to the other. So from our perspective, we took a step back and we said, hang on, you know, let's people still want to buy, and ultimately this crisis is causing a need. So let's try something different. And we actually upped our spend, you know, counterintuitive, because normally in terms of paid leads, you know, on Google and the likes, it's not a real B2B angle. That's not normally how people on B2B buy. But we thought that, you know, people in this noise and having to work from home and all, you know, the change, probably will look at this a bit more. So we upped our spend fourfold in the month of April, and in the month of April and May, which we have data for, not got the latest, our actual lead generation increased 40 times compared to previous. So it's quite interesting that you know, that seems to be something that the way people are buying, and the way even on B2B side is, and this is qualified. This is not, you know, mom and pop store having a look at what is this worth.
It's interesting because all of us are sitting at home and all of us are online, and so when you generate leads through the online mechanism targeting the right customer, you've got great focus on the person's attention. So it's wonderful that you've been able to reap that benefit. And I want to say with conferences, it's who knows when they are going to come back. And it's also something we discussed on Monday with reaching, how you reach new customers, and talking about like trusted networks, and then thinking about leveraging through your you know, the parties that work with you but in adjacent areas, because establishing that new customer relationship right now remotely is very hard. So we'd also love for you to share just some of the approaches you take to reach new customers.
So, you know, that's specifically looking at, I mean, if you go into a new market, you need to bring trust, specifically depending on, you know, we play in security. So, you know, you're from a different market. We don't know who you are. And it's difficult to establish trust remotely, in my view. So in that way, you either create your own trust, or you find a partner that actually has that trusted relationship and can do that soft intro. So what we've done is we realized that if you look at a bank, you know, which is, as I said, we focus financial institutions mainly, you know, banks or our customer inside that organization, and I think this is widely applicable, doesn't only buy one thing. You know, when they buy security, they also buy something else, which is, you know, digital onboarding. They also buy behavioral biometrics, or they buy, you know, digital banking platform and the likes. So the same customer has relationships with other companies that actually aren't competitors of yours, and that sit adjacently and have trusted relationships. So we've actually done this in Latin America and found partners that have these relationships. And you find that you can super quickly get to the right area in terms of interest, the right people, and you come with credibility because, you know, this is the partner that you've had for X years, and they're bringing us in. So I think that's something that definitely is worth working. And I think what we must also understand, taking a step back, is yes, we're not getting in front of new customers or partners, but nobody else is either. So I think those leads and those intros that you have, and that are even sometimes, you know, not that hot yet, focus on those, convert those, because I do think this is by no means over. You know, nobody thinks this, but is this, you know, 18, 24 months, we shall see. And in our view, what I think will happen in the next year specifically is that you will actually have to work with your partners, where you have joint events, where we can leverage on each other's networks and sell into those, where we have a partner in a different country and, you know, listen, we will have this joint webinar or whatever the case or the format might mean, but where we, you know, have a joint solution, or just expose each other's customers and customer base to joint solutions or these things. I think that in the short, medium term is going to be how we actually find new markets, through trusted networks.
No, agree. And it's also, again, it's something that we've seen a lot in the portfolio here in South Africa that we've been working with, where effectively the businesses have looked to each other and seen who's got an adjacent product, who's going to make their product more sticky or more attractive to their existing customer base, and then teamed up with others to enhance their offering. But just wanted to move across to Jason. I mean, sorry, to Asha from PECAN. So Asha, your screen's already on. So let's go with you. So PECAN, just for the South Africans in the room, it's predictive analytics business that was founded in Israel in 2016, and have successfully already raised $11 million.
15.
Just to fund their, how much is it?
15, 1.5.
So now it's 1.5. Okay,
Yeah.
and to fund the initial growth as well as the recent US market expansion.
Yeah.
You can basically, you guys moved from beta customers to full market launch earlier this year, and then with that, one of your co-founders moved across to New York, Bronfman, and then with Breezy, I think, staying in Israel to lead the dev team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just first off, I mean, a very similar question to what we were discussing with AMIT earlier. Just, how does your team approach international sales from an Israeli base, and what's the advice that you'd share with the South African entrepreneurs on the line with building out their international businesses?
Absolutely. So I connect to so many of the things that of the words that all of the people shared before me, and I think ultimately we as Israeli entrepreneurs and business people are basically aligned to be global from day one. Very similar to South Africa, we're a small market. Our local market is, at the best case, a test bed, but not a lot more than that. So even before COVID times, that was our modus operandi of selling from afar in any case. So this change in some ways aligns with what we've been doing beforehand. So I connect them anyway. So also on the digital front, definitely enhancing your digital marketing and making it more effective. Definitely finding the channel partners and the trusted relationships that can help you reach create new relationships and nurture existing relationships. I think also on a very practical level, nurturing the relationships in a very as personable as it can be. So having calls and yes, having video calls with your camera open, and many stages like that. I think that the change that we've been seeing is mostly changes on the customer and client side. We're a B2B business, and we work with medium to large size American and US companies mostly, and the EU companies, but also in other regions. And what we've been seeing is that companies now are more open to go further in the sales process to high volume engagements, also doing that from afar. Usually the initial engagement would be from afar or in face-to-face interactions, such as in conferences and other situations. But now they're more prone to onboarding to a significant annual subscription or integration without meeting face-to-face, and that's a big thing for us. And I think it poses opportunity for any entrepreneur, Israeli and South African alike.
No, exactly. And I mean, just to the point that Michael was raising earlier, it's so much more cost effective.
Absolutely.
Building out your sales team like that, rather than having to have presence in all these markets. And just also thinking through some of the discussion we had earlier this week on just the point you mentioned earlier with the customer's needs having changed so dramatically over this time, then effectively the sales pitch and the sales through to these customers needs to look entirely different. So just really curious to learn from you, how have you guys changed your narrative through to your customers to be relevant?
Absolutely. I really connect. I think it was Michael beforehand that was speaking about what problem are you solving? And I think that's the main thing, because the challenges and the problems have changed.
if until a few months ago, everyone was just trying to get as much of the market and much revenue in what they're doing, then we do a lot of work, for instance, around customer analytics and helping businesses understand their customer base and their leads to identify churn and to identify upsell opportunities, and more on the revenue side. And basically what we do is that we provide predictive analytics for several use cases. So we've basically pivoted and also have a significant focus now on the cost reduction side, knowing that companies are now very averse at taking risks in growth, but want to be very cost conscious. And that's a pivot that we've made in helping companies around use cases, around demand forecasting, and anything around that can help them be more efficient in different lines of the business. So basically identifying what is the main problem that they're seeing now, what's their main challenge, and helping them answer that, and specifically also coming with solutions that are very specific to this age. So even beforehand, we helped companies in predictive analytics, helping with enriching with data from external sources. So if it would be weather or holidays to help companies predict demand. So here also, we've pivoted in also using data that's COVID related in terms of outbreaks and which markets will open or close or anything like that. So basically, to wrap this up, I would say that my suggestion would be to identify what is the main challenge that your customer, your client is dealing with, and apply your message and obviously your product towards that. The nice to haves are very hard to sell now. You have to be a must.
No, exactly. And if you can solve that must, then you can really help the customer survive. And it's
absolutely.
And that makes a huge impact. So thanks so much. Then Jason, I just wanted to move across to you. So let's just get your video on. There we go. Great. So hey, Jason, welcome. So for everyone in the room, MOBILEYE, it's an Israeli unicorn. And also Jason, just chip in and add some extras, but it was acquired by Intel in 2017 for $15 billion. I mean, it's one of the global leaders in the development of vision technology for advanced driver assistance and autonomous driving systems. I mean, MOBILEYE it's founded originally in Israel, and obviously like all other Israeli tech startups, global ambitions. Very similar to what we see most of the South African entrepreneurs. They set up here, we've got low dev costs, and then use this as our test market and then build for the international market. So first, just wanted to ask you to share some of the stories of MOBILEYE and the growth that you had in the initial years versus the growth that you are experiencing now, and how you thought about your international, or how you think about your international growth strategy, and who your customers are.
Sure. So MOBILEYE was founded in Jerusalem, actually, in a typical startup way, out of a garage and a house in Jerusalem, with a handful of employees. And today we're over 2,000 employees, worldwide, and so on, with the majority of them being in Jerusalem, Israel, which is our global head office. It was challenging back then. It took 8 years of research and development to make our first sale, which was to a car manufacturer in 2007. And from there, you went from a few handful of vehicles to more models of vehicles, and the numbers started growing. That we developed new solutions and new products, and all of a sudden, you find yourselves at 1 million vehicles and 5 million vehicles. And in 2014, I think, was the first milestone of the company where they listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And even back then, in August 2014, we were the largest Israeli company to list on the New York Stock Exchange with a market cap of $10.8 billion. And I remember joining at 8 million vehicles, and finally we hit 9 million, and a big milestone was 10 million. And things were happening. People were looking to retrofit this technology to vehicles that didn't have any safety. We've been speaking about problems and how to solve them and so on. And the World Health Organization tell us today that there's over 1.25 million people dying on the road each year due to road crashes. So MOBILEYE comes in there and we say, we can give you technology to help you assist with these crashes from happening. Let's start you off with an early warning prior to the accident from happening. And then, as you mentioned, you touched on earlier, eventually let's get the driver out of the vehicle. Let's get rid of the steering wheel, and eventually we'll have these autonomous vehicles all over the world. So today, speaking, the story is incredible. It's a very proud story of Israeli history and Israeli times today. Intel did acquire us in 2017. They paid $15.3 billion for Mobileye. And today we work with over 27 car auto manufacturers in nearly 60 million vehicles worldwide. So, if you ask me about personal stories and so on, I remember hopping onto planes to South Africa and other parts of the world, and speaking to people and speaking to companies about this technology and lane departure warnings and forward collision warnings and all these things, and they thought I was mad. No one really understood it then. And then part of our strategy was really to create an awareness for the need of this product. If we're able to even halve road accidents each year, we're doing well, and our ultimate goal is to reduce car accidents happening in general as well.
So just, if you think now specifically over the last 3 months versus, how you as Mobileye were managing your sales growth and your sales pipeline, like what's really changed? I mean, the obvious is you now selling remotely, but how are your conversations different, and what techniques and what are you doing differently that's keeping the customers warm and keeping them interested?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing obviously is travel. Last year I would have traveled to Australia maybe 6 times and to South Africa 4 or 5 times. And as Michael mentioned earlier as well, you can invite someone to a board meeting now. Before COVID and before Corona, I would never have dreamed about doing a video call with the Minister of Road Safety in Australia. Couple of weeks ago, that's what I did out of the comfort of my own home. Without having to hop on a plane, which takes a day and a half to get there for a handful of meetings. And that's really something we've focused on as well, is the online videos. The world has always been a small place, and today it's even smaller. You're able to reach people. People are accessible. We at Mobileye focus a lot on digital marketing, where we launch different white papers around different social media platforms. Because people are at home and people are looking for things to read, and people are looking for new technologies and new things to help them when we all come out of this one day. And that's something that we found is working very well at the moment.
No, it's very true. It's so much easier to access some of those individuals that were really hard to get into their diaries. You can get into their diaries much more quickly. So it's great advice just to get out there and ask, because you do get many more yeses than what we got before. Just something else that I wanted to touch on, which also came up with a number of entrepreneurs in our network who are looking to expand internationally, is they effectively before were looking to bolster their cash flows, and effectively they know exactly what the tech is and what the unique product is that they're wanting to take internationally. But just to build up their cash flow, they end up doing quite a bunch of products or tech around that, to sell to the existing customers. But now what they've chosen to do is rather say, no, actually with this opportunity that we can go out and reach this international customer base, we're going to double down on our product, really enhance that product so it is the best in the world, because now we're up and we're competing against everyone can reach everywhere. So I don't know if you've also seen that in your portfolio with the products that you're setting out and services and solutions to your customers.
Sure. We're actually also in the middle of a transformation at Mobileye as well. We focus a lot on data. We started as a traditional camera-based company, teaching or using algorithms to teach a vision sensor what a vehicle looks like and what a pedestrian looks like and what a cyclist looks like, and to try avoid having a collision with these things. And we took the same vision sensor that we install in many vehicles today and made them smarter. And that's something we've done over the last few years as well, is to say, what more can you do with them? And how can we relate that today to COVID? And that's, we all went back to the drawing board in the beginning of this and said, what can we do to, still get sales going, to still enhance our pipelines? And one of the features one of the things we have been doing is using our vision sensors. So as I mentioned earlier, we're really looking to collect as much data on roads as possible and on driving environments as possible. So we've been working with municipalities around the world to see what their traffic flows and what their businesses and what their cities looked like before COVID and how they looked today. How many people were detected at bus stops before when things were running normally, and what does that look like today? Let's collect all this data to help bus operators and route planners better optimize bus routes and public transportation, just as one example. So a big part of our strategy has been to launch and to really get into this transformation that we have been getting into, and it's working, as I said, by the use of digital media and these webinars which are really useful. It has been quite easy to settle into that.
No, it's well, I can say definitely it takes a little while to get used to, but everyone moved across and switched very quickly. So it was about a 10-day or 2-week period, and then the new remote way of working was the new normal. So it's great. Thanks so much, Jason. And then I just wanted to get back to Michael. So if you can switch your video back on. But then, so Michael wanted to shift. So instead of talking about these large B2B businesses, but rather look towards the smaller businesses. So tech businesses that are selling towards B2C or to the smaller businesses. Are there any more specific sales approaches or advice that you had to share for those businesses out there? Because most of our conversation so far has been directed towards the big corporates.
Hi, Alison. Yes, I'm back here. Look, what I will tell you is that for startups, it's actually incredibly difficult to pull off these big sales. I mean, I take my hat off to those entrepreneurs who've done it. It's not the normal type of skill that comes with startups. In fact, what you typically find is people that have quite an obsession with a product because it solves the problem. And, you kind of like bang the product to a big corporate, and you're quite surprised that things don't happen. Selling to large businesses is an enterprise skill, and enterprises have spent a lot of time understanding how to do it to other businesses and to structure them appropriately. My advice simply, and I'm putting this out there, people are happy to debate it with me, is first of all, don't try and sell to government, or don't try and sell to our government. It is incredibly frustrating, it takes incredibly long, and it's just not your normal type of sales practice. I would also caution most startups to be very aware of the long maybe when it comes to corporates. So it seems you've had a positive meeting because you've had tea and biscuits and people were very friendly and they were kind of quite excited about the product. That may be 12 months or 18 months away from even getting an answer, and that answer may turn out to be no. So just don't bet your business on the long maybe. My best advice is to ask for advice for every sale on who the actual decision maker in that business is, whether it's small or large. I think there's a mistaken assumption that it's always the CEO. In many cases, it's not the CEO. The right type of CEOs empower their people to take the right decisions and then hold them accountable for results. So they can't take the decision as to what product or service they should buy. And then kind of my last tip, which I've noticed over the years, is that while there are complex decision-making organs, and often it's by a committee, it's often not the person you think who makes the decision. It's usually one of the younger, up-and-coming stars in that business or in that enterprise. Somebody who's willing to take a chance, knowing that if it's successful, that is also a boost for their own career. So if you can find the people who make the decisions, but also understanding that there's a kind of an informal secondary structure in any type of business, I think then you're setting yourself up for success. Now, these things haven't changed through COVID. There's still a decision-making process, and there are people who make these decisions, and you've got to find out who they are, and there's a skill involved in selling to them. COVID hasn't changed that at all.
No, exactly. And something else, just building on that often that we see is someone just really testing that decision maker to see if they actually do have the ability to move some money, and just, you know, get them to move a really small amount of budget. But if they can move a small amount, they can probably move something that's a bit bigger. But that typically can happen quite fast, and it's a great way to really test the validity that they really are the decision maker. So, but great. And then just the last question, Michael, for you before moving across to AMIT, is just something that you look for on a, you know, as you invest into these growth businesses, in addition to, you know, being a fantastic value proposition, a strong product, is there something that you always look for in the sales team or the commercial mindset of those businesses that you invest in, that you could share with everyone just more at a principled level?
And listen, probably the biggest mistakes that I've made as an investor is that I got too enamored with the idea. You know, so I'm a bit of a nerd or a geek or whatever you want to call it. So if somebody comes with a really cool idea or a concept, I would buy into it and I would imagine how cool the world would be if this idea were adopted. Now, of course, that's a big mistake, because ideas, as cool as they may sound, mean nothing without execution. Everything's really about execution. You can actually have a mediocre idea, but if it's very well executed, that could become a very exciting business. So that type of logic, that execution is everything, pertains to sales as well. It's no good dealing with somebody who says they would be good at selling. Look at the sales track record, either of the CEO or of the head of sales or of the sales team, and see what they've done. Now, that sale doesn't just have to be the formal sale of their product to another company. If a CEO, entrepreneurial CEO, is able to surround him or herself with a really good team, that already is evidence of good sales. That person, therefore, has taken their vision and has managed to get good people from whatever they were doing to come and join him or her. That's already an example of a good salesperson. But there's nothing that beats a track record, nothing that beats execution. So the heuristic, the kind of short way of doing it, is just to say, show me some of the sales that you have done, because, you know, once you've got a track record, that's easy. I'd also look at incentivization. I think businesses that understand the importance of sales don't have a problem incentivizing their salespeople or their sales teams. And those can be big incentives. I've seen businesses where, you know, the sales people earn more than the CEO, and the CEO is happy to do that, knowing that of the value that they add. Typically, though, or not typically, ideally, it shouldn't be too short term. And those incentives, you know, there can be something upfront for the sale, but ideally, it should be over the lifetime of the deal. But if I had to give any tips to those salespeople, I'm going to use this big word that often gets abused, of customer centricity, but really just focusing on the customer, giving the customer what they want. Sometimes it isn't your product as it is currently configured. Maybe there's certain features that they want. Just listen to what they want and find out if it is in your means to actually adapt what you have so that they can solve the problem that they have there in their business. And then maybe just the final one that I've often found with people is, don't just sell the features of your product, help your customer with their business case to get it adopted. Now, that's a very different thing. Understand what it is that they have to do also inside their business to sell what it is they are doing, help them achieve their business goals. Because remember, what you're selling them is just a means to an end. So don't just hammer out the features, find out how you can help them have a positive business case, and you increase your chances of success significantly.
Great, thanks, Michael. And yeah, I want to say, really understanding your customer and knowing what they're trying to solve. If you can do that and then help them solve it.
Which often, by the way, if I may just add, involves, instead of like, you know, we've got this idea of somebody selling who, you know, keeps on repeating all the good things about their product. There's a lot to be said for asking the right questions, really understanding what they want, and then finding out if you can meet that. So, you know, the old model of sales, of hard selling, of like selling second-hand cars, I just don't think that's the thing that flies nowadays. It's fulfilling needs that's important.
Great, thanks so much. Then just wanted to move across to AMIT. So AMIT, hi, and thanks, your screen, your video is back on, so that's great. But just last two questions for you before, as we're getting to the close of the session. Just wanted to know, when you look across the different businesses that you guys are invested in, if you've seen any different approaches or new channels that these businesses have been able to open up or take on or new geographies. And then you can share some of those examples or share an example of or two with the rest of us. Just talking about how the businesses that you've invested in have achieved that, making use of this opportunity. Oh, just hand.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. It varies obviously a lot by stage. So when you're
Yes.
largest stage, when you have companies that are growth stage with hundreds of millions of sales, then it's easier to launch a new geography. But when you're an earlier stage company, at this point, it's better not, this is not a great time to launch your second geography. You're focused already on what's working. So if you're an Israeli company or a South African company selling in the US, it's probably better to focus on that versus now starting to launch other geographies, because again, it takes too much of your focus, too much of the time. And everything now moves a bit slower. So hiring people is a bit more difficult, finding the right people for them to understand, for you to kind of make ramp them up, or the new salespeople in new geography is going to take a bit longer for them to engage. And when we start multiplying all these things with a new geography or a new channel, then it just it's not a good money or focus spent versus just going with what's already working and doubling down on that. So I think most of our companies now, they already have a sales channel or sales are just they're trying new things. Obviously, we mentioned before, kind of going with new products or things that are easier to sell or different go-to-markets. But this is not a great time to launch a new geography. And the same thing with channels. Like if you already have a channel and it's working, then that's great because it helps you. But if you need to now start building a channel, it's just going to take much longer. It takes much longer than most people expect often to launch a channel, because you have to get the channel ready, you have them to understand what your product is, you have a champion there, they have to start explaining to their people on the ground the new product that they have to sell until they start selling. Again, when you multiply all these things with COVID or add the extra time and effort, it's better to go direct if you can, unless you have something that's already working with the channel.
No, exactly. That's no, great advice. And honestly, if it's going to take a much longer period of time, there's nothing more expensive than just burning more cash while you wait for that sale to come. But just then, going back to the first half of your response, saying, double down on your existing customers and your existing channels. So I would love for us just to talk a bit more about some great examples that you've seen of businesses, but potentially, preferably on the smaller end of the scale, so the ones that are at an earlier stage, because the crowd that's here today is more to that side. So if you've seen any good examples where these earlier stage businesses have really doubled down and made use of their existing relationships and their existing channels, and then what are the techniques they've used to rebuild their sales pipelines?
Yeah, so first, when I'm saying focus on your existing business, this has to be just your existing customer base. Like if you already are able to sell online something in the US and you can do it direct, like it's fine to find and try to acquire new logos and new customer base, but it's better to do the same go-to-market or whatever already works for you now versus launching something completely different, unless you have to revamp it and slightly adjust it, obviously, for COVID. But that was kind of the idea. In terms of selling to your customer base, many of our companies, when COVID launched, like one of the immediate things they did is they just reached out to all their customers to kind of make sure that they're happy and they're stable, and you want to make sure that you're not going to get significant churn with many companies trying to cut costs. And then once you start having this dialogue, like oftentimes you suddenly realize that there might be other services that you offer that they just don't know, because there's always this discrepancy between what you offer and what your customers really knows that you. So having that conversation, reaching out to your customer, it's a good practice to do anyway, but oftentimes it just gets neglected because you have already something booked and all the sales reps are looking for their next deal, which would typically be another customer. Just re-engaging with your existing customers, making sure they're fine, having that conversation often leads to upsell opportunities, which you never even thought about. And we've seen that.
I want to say it's a very good example to raise, because when at this time people are also actually more open to share. And so when you ask the questions now, you know, people tell you, oh, we're struggling with this or that, and then through that conversation, then you as the, you know, you can see what other services that would possibly be interesting. And it really talks to the point that Michael was also making around just really getting to know your customer. What do they actually need? And rather just instead of just taking your product or solution, make sure that you're understanding what the updated context is to sell into.
Yeah.
Are there some businesses that you've got that have done that really well, or is that really just across the portfolio of your investments that have all taken this?
I wish they've all taken it. Obviously, you know, some have done a better job at it than others. But we have some. For example, we have a company called Toast in the US, which sells POS for restaurants. Like obviously, you know, like you can't have a worse customer base than restaurants these days. And when COVID hit, they were really frightened about what was going to happen with their churn and their customers going under. And they reached out, and then they realized that many of their customer base are now looking for a way to sell the products or the food, but online. So they kind of tailored the POS to be able to connect their inventory and be able to connect it to Uber Eats and all these other services. And suddenly that new product is taking up a lot and is getting a lot of traction and helping kind of deal with what they're seeing, the contraction from the regular POS business. So again, like talking to your customer, understanding the needs, adjusting the products, you know, it's easy to say, but it's difficult to do, and it's really important.
No, exactly. But Amit, thanks so much for that. And I want to say, just getting out there and really making sure that your product, you revise your solution to meet the updated customer needs. It will make all the difference to ensuring the success of the pipeline and the revenue sales. So thanks so much for sharing that. And just want to move across to Skalk for the last couple of minutes of the call. And guys, please, you know, there are a few more minutes for questions. We haven't seen that many questions in the panel, so we've just kept going with the discussion. But if there are some burning questions from the floor, please put them in the chat, and then we'll ask them to whichever panelist is the appropriate panelist. But Skalk, just wanted to get back to one of the topics that you mentioned earlier with your global expansion, and most recently LATAM, what you were discussing. And we're just sharing with Amit now's not necessarily the right time to go to a new region. But what you're mentioning earlier is when you go through a distribution partner who's already well trusted in the network, that's been a very interesting and led to some very interesting opportunities for you at Intersect. So just wanted to hear from you, like I would say, just very February, March versus April, May, and how your teams worked with the new customers that you were engaging with in Brazil and the markets, and just hear how your sales have changed over that period of time, and also just what's helped the success.
Okay, so the interesting thing, and I think this is the dilemma that we're sitting with. So we had met these partners and built a rapport, obviously, before you know, before that. So it's somebody that already knew us, and I think therein lies the issue. I mean, let's look at ourselves. If somebody, you know, calls us up and say, hey, I need an intro to, you know, name the bank or name the large partner, you know, if you put your credibility on the line, it does mean that you know, you need to know those guys in some other way or form, or at least know that they're credible, or have at least checked out their technology. So I do think that there's time required to get that done. So therein is a network of, you know, like Endeavor. It is critical to actually have that soft landing. So it's easier to find a partner than to actually find a customer, because I think, you know, everybody's desperate for sales. And I think on the, you know, on the partner side, you know, partners are also looking for new channels. So I think it's an interesting time to do that, but you do need a soft landing. So we had built up that network. You know, we met our partners, some of them through other partners, some of them at, you know, Money 2020 or other conferences. But it's been a super short sales cycles in those markets because of the credibility that these customers bring. I don't, or partners rather. I don't know if it's because people are looking for solutions and understand that they need it now, and there's no time to actually go out and do the normal process and think about things, because we've seen some interesting, and specifically on the volume side, I've seen some really interesting statistics around our market, which is financial institutions. Now we've seen 200% jump from FIS in mobile banking new registrations in April. 200% increase. From our side in SA, we saw over a 200% increase in scan to pay usage. Over close to 100% month-on-month increase in 3D Secure. So a lot of these things are all of a sudden just spiking, and people need to actually find something to fix problems like now. So that might mean that there really is a buyer's impulse, to actually get to this. So the short and sweet is, I don't think we need to find a way to actually get to network, either through your partner, somebody that you've met before, nurture, land that, but it can be really quick after that. So for Brazil and LATAM specifically, we found really strong partners. Obviously, it's language issue. It's not English in those in those countries. It does bring complexity in terms of requirements of contracts in Spanish or in Portuguese. It does make negotiations difficult and these kind of things. So there's some hurdles to jump over. But from a South African perspective, we've seen that the South American or LATAM market buys a lot more similar to the banks here compared to the US. The solutions that we have here resonate quite strongly with those markets. I don't know if it is specifically because, obviously it's emerging market, but I do think what we've seen in the US market is, very large companies are loath to buy from unknown smaller, size does matter. And I think, those behemoths don't really exist in those markets. But also it's in the US, people or the banks want to buy a complete end-to-end solution. And in South Africa, they buy either toolkits or, they're willing to buy two things from different vendors. And I think we see that also happen in the LATAM market. So it's also, what was mentioned earlier in terms of what people buy, how they buy is super important. Again, as Amit said, super hard, but super important. But I think you have to, if you sit in front of a customer, you have to be ballsy enough to ask them, listen, who's the decision maker? I think it's something that I don't take offense at saying. I think you'll find it interesting that at most banks, a lot of them think they're the decision makers or would like to be and still say yes. But you need to navigate, you need to understand what it is that they actually, who makes the calls, who makes the buying decisions, where does the budget, who's the budget owner, and what is the process. But LATAM, I think it is from a South African entrepreneur perspective, I think it's through the right partner, it can be a softer landing than the US.
No, I'm going to say, Schalk, thanks so much for that response. And it is really interesting to see some of the commonalities that exist between the corporates that are in those markets and the South African corporates, specifically in the banking sector. And then again, just how differently, honestly, the US banks buy versus the banks here and the banks in LATAM, just given the product suite that they're looking for. But guys, I just want to call, we are out of time. But I do want to say thank you so much to everyone on the panel, to you guys who joined us from Israel. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here with us. And I think many of us will take you up on the offer from your ambassador who offered on your behalf to continue to share the learnings. So we'll keep this channel open. We really enjoyed it and so appreciated the advice that you guys shared. So Amit, Asha and Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Amit for setting this up with us. I mean, just fantastic and great to meet you all. Likewise, Michael and Schalk, thank you. Just what a pleasure to be able to have a conversation with you guys, and so appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your experiences and advice with everyone. It's invaluable. So
thank you so much. Thank you, Alison. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. But everyone, enjoy the rest of the evening and go well.
Go well.
Bye-bye.